SABAZEL by Lillian Stewart Carl, from Chapter 6. Danica nodded her thanks. She entered the dimly lit temple alone and paused as a movement caught the corner of her eye. A mist lay over the pool, shadows streaming upward from the water, phantom wings. The mosaic shifted, the tiles tumbling themselves every which way in some frantic effort to form a picture. Danica walked warily to the edge of the pool and knelt on its coping. The mist was dark and thick. No, there, a figure, a grave smile and eyes bright with a quiet conviction. Hands open and filled with asphodel, as dry and brown as a funeral wreath. Viridis. Of course, Danica had been speaking of her. Of course she would see her. But the back of her neck prickled in warning. Slowly she stood, cursing the lassitude with which her pregnancy had afflicted her, and she pulled her nerves and muscles into the singing tautness that alertness demanded. The woman Lyris lay on the pallet, flat on her back, her arm over her eyes, reminding Danica of the way Belastros had lain defeated. Something about the posture disturbed her. It was unfeminine, wrong. She stepped inside the room and lifted the feeble oil lamp from its niche by the door. "Greeting," she said quietly. "You have come safely to SABAZEL, sanctuary and a new life. I am Danica, ruler." Lyris's hand twitched, her fingers crawling like spiders across the coverlet. Her arm dropped from her face, and for a moment her oddly translucent eyes rolled in their sockets. Then the pupils dilated, the irises steadied, and the woman sat up. She was pitifully thin, her chin and cheekbones as sharp as the beak of a bird of prey. Her hair straggled, tangled, and dirty over her shoulders. Her garments clung like tattered grave wrappings to her bones. Yet there was the spark of gold at her throat. Despite her misgivings, Danica extended her hand in welcome. Atalia was right. A horror hung about this woman, some deep and mortal fear, as if her spirit were buried alive in a rock-cut tomb, and only her shade walked the waking world. "Danica," Lyris said. Her voice was weak, distant. She staggered to her feet, faltered, began to fall. Danica reached out to help her. Lyris's body closed around itself, regaining control. Deliberately, she fell against Danica's knees. The lamp went flying, landing on the pallet with a splash of oil and fire, and blue flames leapt instantly upward. Danica's taut body did not crumple but hit the floor and bounced up again, crouched for battle. But Lyris was strong, too strong for her emaciated condition, and her elbow struck Danica's midriff in a vicious blow. Danica's breath hissed from her lungs in a gasp, and her queasy stomach surged into her throat. Even as she fell, she ordered herself to roll, ready to rise again, but as Lyris's hands closed like talons around her arms, and Lyris's eyes glittered darkly a hand's breadth from her face. The look was a stiletto thrust deep into her mind, and with a gasp of pain she collapsed backward. It should have been a simple matter to toss her assailant away from her, but Danica's body no longer responded to her thought. Her finely honed muscles were as limp as spun flax. The odor of unguents, natron, and decay emanated from Lyris's form, choking her, and she could not regain the breath she had lost. Atalia was outside. Her voice was only a faint gurgle in her throat. The glittering eyes laughed at her, reflecting the blue flame that leapt and hissed but did not consume the pallet. Lyris drew back, and still Danica could not move. "Mother, what?" But it was an effort just to remember her own name, where she was, what office she held, and her thoughts crawled through a putrefying ooze, seeking air and light. The stranger's voice no longer hesitated, but was deep and resonant. queen of SABAZEL, Ashtar's daughter, who dares dispute the power of almighty Harus? Mother. Lyris reached to her throat and removed the gold chain that hung there. She bent and wrapped the chain securely around Danica's ankles. Golden jesses, my queen, a gift from the falcon. Mother, no. Lyris was dragging her inert form away from the coldly blazing fire. No, you will not burn, though that is the preferred death for witches. You will die like a rat before the eyes of your false goddess. How shameful. No, such thoughts were not hers. Danica closed her eyes, spiraling downward into her own mind, tracing the threads of her thought. Her head bumped over the doorsill, but she hardly felt it. It was a spell that held her, and a spell could be broken. Desperately she searched through the nerves and tendons of her own body, summoning at least some small measure of her former strength. She managed to writhe feebly against the chain. Lyris smiled, cruelly complacent, and jerked the chain so sharply that pain exploded in Danica's legs. The pain cut through the ooze clogging her mind. Mother, as you sent the Princess Viridis to warn me, send her now to help me. Lyris jerked Danica to the edge of the pool, seized her arm, and pulled her onto the coping. The shadowy mist engulfed her, and she struggled again. It was too late. Lyris pushed, and Danica fell helplessly into the water. Her mouth and nose and eyes filled. She seemed to fall down into some dark crevasse, suffocating. Viridis, the falcon must not kill again, this time to kill your own grandchild, Viridis. Even as her breath rattled in her lungs, the tile shifted beneath her cheek. From the skylight above her fell a pale luminescence, moonlight, and yet not the normal light of the moon. A wind rippled through the shadows, and the mists dissipated. The transparent form of a woman floated above the pool, bending, her pale hands reaching out and scattering dried leaves of asphodel upon the drowning woman. With a crack, the chain shattered, its individual links piercing the surface of the water and pattering down like a golden shower on the edges of the pool. And Danica surged upward, her strength restored in one sudden flood of light.